Hello again everyone, welcome to the guitar setup video. We're going to set up the guitar that we restrung in the last video. Now you won't need to do most of these adjustments most of the time. A lot of it applies to setting up the guitar when you first buy it, but there are some things it's wise to check whenever you change the strings, especially if you change a string gauge. And there are others that you can check at longer intervals. Now, I would recommend watch the whole video first, and then the timings for each adjustment are in the description below. Just click more and you can find the section that you want. And these are some of the tools I would recommend. You don't necessarily need all of them, but let's have a look at them in a bit more detail. Okay, well, one of the most important things is this little set of Allen keys. Now, when you buy a new guitar, you get a set of Allen keys that fit the truss rods and the saddles and various other places. There's 3 different ones here. Varies from guitar to guitar. But when you're buying a second-hand guitar, quite often people have lost these. So unless it's a very cheap guitar, and it doesn't really matter, I would insist on having the Allen keys. You can probably get replacements from the manufacturer, but it's all a bit difficult. And you might have Allen keys at home as well, which might fit, but who knows, these are specially tailored for the job. Now, possibly the next most useful thing is this little gadget here, which you can buy quite cheaply. It's a guitar string action gauge, a ruler if you like. It's got 64ths of an inch, millimeters, thousandths of an inch, all kinds of different measurements on it, depending on what measurements you're used to using. And you could just use a little engineer's steel rule that starts from 0, but you need something that can actually measure string heights and whatnot. That's a really good investment. I also find this handy. It's just a feeler gauge that you would get. Actually, you was using it to measure the spark plug gaps and the old points gaps on the old cars. I've had it for donkey's years. Don't really do that now with all this engine management and whatnot, but set of feeler gauges, you don't need it again. A business card's about 10 thousandths of an inch thick, and that's the most important measurement. That's the only one I use it for. We'll see that as we go along. And there's some fairly common tools, some crosshead screwdrivers. Most people probably have those. A capo, you should definitely have a capo. That's going to be useful. And then we've also got this gadget, which again, you don't need to buy. It's a straight edge. It's quite handy. You can use a steel rule, or actually you don't really even need a straight edge because the guitar strings form a perfectly good straight edge, but it's a handy thing to have. I'll show you how to use that as well. Okay, so let's have a look at what we do with all this stuff. Okay, well, here we are at the nut end of the guitar, as it were, and just want to check the string height. Not a lot we're going to do to adjust it, but if I press down around about the 2nd or 3rd fret on the string, hold it down, and then I just tap, and it should just clear. You can see it's just clearing that 1st fret. It moves down a little bit when I tap it, and all the strings should do that. So that's good, just a little bit of clearance. And the other thing we can do is use our ruler to measure the gap between the bottom of the string and the top of the fret, and it should be about 15 to 20 thousandths of an inch. And I can see that the 10,000 mark is clear and the 20,000 isn't. And that's just over 1/64th if you want to work that way. So that's pretty good. And then it goes all the way across to the top fret, and it should be a little less under the top string. And I have measured it, and it is. Now, what can we do about it if it isn't correct? If that gap's too low, well, probably need a new nut, but that might need some professional help. Same if the gap's too high. We can file these slots down but you have to file them at an angle like this so they get a good break angle. Very difficult. You need a set of nut files. Some of them are thicker and they get thinner and thinner as they go up. Not only that, but if you're not very careful and you file too low, then you've ruined the whole thing. You need a new nut anyway. So really, you're going to need professional help. You're going to need a guitar shop or a luthier probably at this stage. This is for beginners, so I'm not going to go into that. But it's worth checking on those things just to make sure that if you have got excessive string height, it's not the nut that's at fault, it's at the other end, at the bridge end. Or maybe it's the bend on the neck itself. So let's have a look at what we can adjust. All right, well, the next thing to do is to check how flat the neck is. Now, I've taken the neck rest out because I don't want any pressure on the neck. I want it to just lie flat. Some people do this with the guitar in plain position on the knee, but I don't think there's any pressure on it really there. Now, I'll just show you this. Here we have a perfectly flat guitar neck. It looks flat, but the strings, when you press down on the strings here, they're going to tend to be hitting the frets higher up the neck, and that can cause a bit of string buzz. You can also have a neck where it's in a bit of a hump, like this kind of shape. The strings will definitely buzz there. Obviously, as soon as you press down on a string there, it'll be hitting this area. So what we really want is a slightly concave neck. Now, it's exaggerated on the drawing, but it wants to be slightly concave so that the strings are lying along here like this. When you press them down here, they don't hit the other frets and cause buzz. Okay, so we've put a capo on at the first fret. That's just to take the nut out of the equation. And we're going to hold the string down around the 15th fret. Doesn't really matter exactly where, just well beyond the 12th fret. And now our string is forming a straight edge, and we're going to tap it over somewhere like the 7th fret. And we should just have a little bit of movement there. You should hear a slight ping and see the string moving slightly up and down. That's about what we want. That was going to be about 10,000ths of an inch. Okay, so now if we want to measure that a little bit more accurately, I'm using the feeler gauge here. That's 10,000ths of an inch. And I'm putting it under the string around about the 7th, 8th, 9th frets. And I can feel it's just touching the string. It's going under without forcing the string upwards. So we know we've got about the right gap. If you haven't got a feeler gauge, you can use a business card. That is about 10,000ths of an inch. And you can feel, if you push it in here, it does force the string up and it grips. Whereas we've got a little bit of slack there. So that's about what you want. Okay, so if you want to be really accurate about it, you can use one of these straight edges. It's a great investment. Not expensive to buy, but it fits. It has little notches that fit over the frets. It's not touching the nut, so that all this is just resting straight on the wood of the guitar. So it's very accurate. And if you want to try again, get your 10,000ths of an inch measurement under the middle there. You can see it goes. If you try to put it in at this end, it won't go. If you try to put it in at this end, it won't go. Those are touching the fingerboard. So you know because it goes in the middle that you've got a little bit of bend in the neck. And that's just slightly more than 10,000ths. So what's happening here is the strings are attached at this end to the bridge, and they're attached at this end to the head of the guitar, and they're in tension, so they're tending to pull the neck upwards into a bend like that, into a concave bend. But inside the neck there is a long steel rod. This is the truss rod. It goes right down inside the neck, and it's holding the neck straight. And in fact, as we tighten the truss rod, it pulls the neck against the strings, pulls it that way, straightens the neck out. As we slacken off the truss rod, it allows the strings to pull the neck up again into a bend. So we're playing off those two forces against each other. Okay, so how do we actually adjust the truss rod? Well, it's easy really, but the cover is there, and it's in between the 3rd and 4th string, and I don't want to bruise those strings. So I'm just going to, you don't have to take them off, but I'm going to slacken them off a little bit. And Just try and move them out the way. Just pop them out of their slots. Okay, so I made myself a little bit of room there. And then I'm going to take a screwdriver. There's a very small screw in there. You need like an electrical screwdriver perhaps. Just take that screw out. And then you've got to get the truss rod cover out somehow or other. Just brute force and ignorance usually works. And there you can see there's the Allen nut. That's the end of your truss rod. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to get the Allen key that fits in there. Came with the guitar, and now we've got movement. Now, when you adjust a truss rod, as I said, if you want to straighten the neck out, if you've got a huge gap under your strings, then action's really high, then you want to tighten the truss rod. So that's turn it that away clockwise, but don't turn it more than quarter of a turn. A little dab will do you in this case. If you want to slacken it off because you've got no gap at all and your strings are touching the fingerboard when you've fretted at the first fret and you've fretted up here at the 15th fret, shall we say, and there's no gap whatsoever under the strings, then you want to slacken the truss rod off. So you want to move it left or anti-clockwise, quarter of a turn again. I'm not going to change this because it doesn't need changing. So having done that, then you need to tune back up to pitch again, pop your strings back into their slots, tune it back up to pitch, and then take your measurements again. Now, give it time as well. It sometimes takes a little while for the neck to move, for the changes to take place. So you want to just go and have a coffee and come back and measure it. If it's still not right, then another quarter of a turn in whichever direction's appropriate. And that's all you need to do. And you will find that the neck will bend, and there'll be your measurements will come right. Now, you can see on this guitar at this end of the neck there isn't a truss rod cover. So where on earth is the access to the truss rod? Well, it's at the other end of the neck in this case. There's a plastic wheel, and you can do basically, it's holes all around. You stick anything you like into the holes, and you can tighten and slacken the truss rod from this end. Now, the same thing applies about which way you would move the truss rod. If you want to tighten the truss rod and straighten the neck out and reduce the gap underneath the strings, then you need to turn it clockwise. Imagine turning a screw, or putting, if you're not a DIY fan, putting the lid on a jar or a bottle. Turn it clockwise or move it to the right. That tightens the truss rod and straightens the neck out. And vice versa, if you want to slacken the truss rod off, move it to the left, turn it anti-clockwise as you're looking from the end here. And that will slacken the truss rod and allow the strings to pull the neck up into more of a bend. Now, I don't have one of these, but some guitars have, with a bolt-on neck like this, you actually have to undo these bolts, take the neck off, and the access to the truss rod is inside the neck. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is check what's called the action. That is the height of the strings measured over the 12th fret, and it's between the bottom of the string and the top of the fret. Now, if the action's too low, then the strings will tend to buzz, and if the action's too high, then the guitar will be difficult to play, and also when you press down on the strings, you'll be stretching them and putting them out of tune. So it's good to have the right action. Now, opinions vary as to what the best height is. Some people like a very low action. I tend to strum rather heavily, so I like to have a higher action so that the strings don't keep hitting the frets. Now, measure it using your string action ruler or a steel rule, and it needs to be approximately 1.5 to 2 millimeters on the bass string gap between the bass string and the fret. Or if you want to work in thousandths of an inch, between 60 and 80 thousandths, or if you want to work in fractions of an inch, about 5/64. That's about normal. if you find that your strings are either higher or lower than you want it, then these saddles can be raised and lowered. You have two little Allen bolts in each saddle, and you're provided with this little Allen key. Now, if you screw the screw clockwise, then you're going to raise up the saddle. If you screw it anti-clockwise, you're going to lower the saddle. But you want to lower them both by the same amount. So let's say in this case, I'm going to do half a turn. So I'm looking to get over there like that. And then I want to do the other one half a turn so that the saddle stays level. So turn that one around like that. And that will have lowered the action. Okay, so now we measure again between the bottom of the string and the top of the fret, and I can see that's about 80 thousandths. And then we want to go across and do the same thing with each string, adjusting each of the saddles, but the treble strings go a lot lower or a lot closer to the fingerboard. And for the treble strings, I would say between 1 to 1.5 millimeters, that's 40 to 60 thousandths of an inch, or about 3/64 if you're working in fractions of an inch. That's a typical manufacturer's recommendation for the heights of the strings. All right, so I've been across all the strings and measuring them. And as I say, the idea was to try and get a gradual slope between the 80 thousandth of an inch height here and the 60 thousandth there. In fact, I've decided to just do it in 5,000 intervals. So I've measured the bass string at 80 thousandths, 75, 70, 65, 60, and 55 thousandths of an inch. But as long as you just get that slope. All right, so I'll show you the standard way of intonating a guitar, which you'll see on every video about guitar intonation. And this means getting the string to play in tune as you play up the neck. It's all very well playing it open in tune, but is it still in tune when you're fretting it higher up? That's what its intonation is. This is the standard way of doing it, and then I'll tell you why I don't agree with the standard way of doing it. All right, so what we do is, first of all, get the bass string in tune. So that should be an E. And we want to be really accurate about this. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. So the string played open is E. So now what we do is we press down on the string, not too hard, press it over the 12th fret, and pick the string again. And go back and check the tuning. Now that's pretty much E. It's perhaps just a little sharp. Now we know that the shorter a string is, the higher the note is. So if this length between the 12th fret and the saddle is too short, then the note at the 12th fret will be sharp. So what we need to do is we need to make this length longer, and we do that by putting a screwdriver in here and screwing the saddle backwards like that. On the other hand, if the note at the 12th fret is lower than E, when we've got an E played open but this is lower than E, the string, then this string length is too long. So what we need to do is undo the saddle, and there's a little spring which you can see in here that pushes the saddle forward and makes this length shorter. So now we've got a shorter string, we get a higher note. So that's how we raise and lower the note. Pull the saddle back to lower the note and unscrew the saddle and let it go forward in order to raise the note. And then what we want to do is retune the string. It will have changed when we change the saddle. Get it back exactly to E and go through the whole procedure again. Press down at the 12th fret, and there we go, perfectly E at the 12th and E when it's open, so that string's now intonated. And we do the same for all 6 strings. Okay, well now I'm going to tell you why I disagree with that standard way of intonating strings, because you'll notice the position of these saddles is slightly different. Each one's a different length. So normally what you get is the 6th string is further back, then the 5th, then the 4th, getting further forward, then it jumps back again to the 3rd string and further forward to the 2nd and further forward to the 1st. Well, obviously, if this string length between the 12th fret and these saddles is all different, because all these saddles are in a different place, then that theory that this length is exactly the same as that length kind of falls down, because it's different for each individual string. And that's actually true all the way up the fretboard. So that really, instead of having a fret that goes across like this, the fret should be all staggered. Some should be further forward and some should be further back, each individual fret. That's the physics. The strings are not all the same. In actual fact, they do make a guitar that's like that, but it's virtually impossible to play. So they just average it out. So that fret's just an average position there where the string will be in tune. Now, in my view, when I'm playing at the bottom end of the guitar here, this is where all the big chords are. So I want these chords to be in tune. When I'm playing higher up the neck, I'm normally bending strings. I'm using vibrato on the strings, and I'm pulling them around all over the place. So I'm not too bothered if they're perfectly in pitch up here, but I am bothered if they're perfectly in pitch down here, because when I hold the chord down, the guitar just sounds out of tune. So what I tend to do is, having checked that all the 12th fret notes are the same as the open string notes, I then go down to the bottom, and let's say on the bass string I'll check the 3rd fret, because at the 3rd fret that's a G note. I know that I'm going to be playing a G chord, shall we say, and I want that note to be G. So just try it, and it's way sharp, it's way over G. So what I'm going to do now, although it's perfectly E at the 12th fret, it's not perfectly G at the 3rd fret. It's too sharp. So I'm going to make the string longer, and that'll lower the note. So what I'm going to do is tighten up, if I can get the screwdriver in there from this angle, tighten up the string, make it longer. Now I need to tune back the pitch, because that will greatly raise the pitch of the note. So I'm tuning it back to E again. Okay, and then try my 3rd fret again. And that's still way high. I'll give it a little bit of slack first, because it does tighten the string when you turn this screw. Pull the saddle back a bit further, and it's actually quite far back now. It's actually nearly as far back as it can go. So I'm going to run out of adjustment. And I'm just going to have to do my best. Just averaging everything out is all I'm doing. So tune it back to E again. The sun's shining outside, I can't see. Tune it back to E again. Okay, there we go. And try the 3rd fret. And that's not bad, actually. If you don't press down too hard, that's spot on G. So I'm happy with that. I'll try the 5th fret, that should be A. And that is spot on A, so that's fine. But I bet if I go to the 12th fret, it's now way sharp. Actually, it isn't. That's absolutely amazing. So that's what I've done, is I've just averaged it out. I'm kind of more concerned that it's in tune down here than up there, if that makes any sense. If it doesn't, send me a message and I'll talk you through it a little bit. So having checked the 3rd fret G on the bass string, I would also check the 3rd fret C on the 5th string, maybe the 2nd fret E on the 4th string, the 2nd fret A, that's really going to be very sharp. You'll find that A, 2nd fret of the 3rd string. I would check the 3rd fret of the 2nd string, that's a D note, and again maybe check the G and maybe the A on the top string. check any of these notes that you know within the first 5 frets and readjust the intonation so that those are correct, whatever it might be at the 12th fret. So that's what you do, just fiddle about with it. But for me, you get your notes down here as near as you can. Don't worry too much what they are up there. Bit of practice, you can't go wrong fiddling about. You can always move these saddles back again, back and forward as much as you like. There's nothing, no harm to be done. Just mess around so that your guitar's sounding in tune kind of everywhere. On average, it might be a bit flat here and a bit sharp there. That's what you've got to do, average it out. If you get it spot on here, it'll be way sharp there and so forth. So you've got to piece out the odds a bit. Okay, well, the final adjustment to do is the height between the pickups, the top of the pole piece and the bottom of the string. And you can see here we've got what are called single coil pickups. Tend to find those on Strat style guitars. And this is like a double pickup. It's called a humbucker pickup. And they have different heights. It's important to have the single coil pickups a little bit further away from the strings and the humbucker pickups a little bit closer to the strings. Now, if you have the pickups too low down, you'll get a loss of volume and bite and a little bit of a muddy sound. But if you have them too high near the strings, then you'll get blurry notes, harsh trebles, warbling overtones. The magnetic pull of the pickups will interfere with the strings. It's not good. You don't want the pickups too high, definitely not. A little bit on the low side's better. But really you need to experiment a little bit. Turn your pickups up and down and listen to the sound that you're getting through your amplifier and adjust them accordingly. Yep. So what we do is we push down the last fret and then we put whatever, a measuring device, a little steel rule on there and measure between the top of the pole piece and the bottom of the string. So the adjustment is done with these little screws at either end of the pickups, you can see here, and with the humbucker ones, these ones in the middle. That raises and lowers the pickups. So if we screw the screw in, tightening the screw, it raises the pickup up, and if we unscrew it, slackening off the screw, it moves the pickup down. So for these single coil pickups, we want to have about 6/64ths gap on the bass side and about 5/64ths on the treble side. So that's 7mm and 5mm, or if you're doing it in thousandths, 90 thousandths and 75 thousandths. That's for both the single coils. Now humbucker pickups, these paired pickups, these can be closer, and around about 4/64ths right across is probably okay. That's 1.5mm, or if you're doing it in thousandths, it's about 60 thousandths. Now some people would say have the treble side a little higher and the bass side a little lower, because the bass string's obviously louder and you don't want the treble string to be too feeble. But again, just play with it, listen to it and decide what you want. And understand that these figures are all highly debatable. You can see vastly different recommendations from manufacturers and from people online. So you've got to play with it yourself. But the figures I've given you are a good starting point. Now I know it sounds like a big job and very complicated, but you won't need to do most of these adjustments most of the time. A lot of it's just setting up the guitar in the first place and then it'll be fine. But it's a good idea to check the two saddle adjustments, the string height and the length of the strings or the intonation whenever you change strings. Don't be scared of it. It's just a few screws and a bit of wood. You can't really go wrong, and you'll get more confidence as you mess about with it. And some of these adjustments really will make your guitar much easier to play and make it sound a lot better. So take your time, check it out again, and we'll see you in the next video. It'll be all about how to change the strings on your acoustic guitar. Okay, bye everyone. Thanks for watching.